online and on site. So without further ado, let's get started. Do I have slides here? Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, I should have introduced me already, so we're going to skip the boring introduction. Let's rather talk about what you brought here. Can I ask to raise your hands if you have a particular idea about your export-import business? Who has those export-import ideas? One? Two? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I see some hands over there. Excellent. So I think this session will be very informative for you. And the way I structured it is that we will be going through the four pillars of a successful international trading business. I'll show you exactly what you need to do to establish your footprint and come up with the idea what products to trade, for example, and which countries to trade, because there are over 100 of those countries, and there are certain tools that I'll show you that will help you to narrow down the list of the markets to two. And then we'll talk about where to find the contacts, the reliable contacts of potential buyers and sellers, because this is one of the most pressing questions. You may have a product idea, you may have identified your markets, but now you're asking yourself, okay, what's next? Where do you actually find those customers or those suppliers? Now, the four pillars that I mentioned are exactly selection of the product, defining your product's value proposition, profiling your ideal customers or suppliers, and selection of the particular export or import markets. However, the motivation is something that is going to drive you. First of all, you have to answer yourself. You have to answer the question: why international business? Why export-import? Why not to take a job, for example, or why not to venture into another business? So, when you do business internationally, you certainly will experience some issues and downtimes, and you'll have to have a motivation that will keep you afloat and hopefully will help you to overcome challenges. So now let's dive into those four pillars. Selection of the product. So a couple of recommendations how you select the product. First of all, you select the product you are most familiar with. And this familiarity may come from your experience, maybe your family, your previous job, your studies as well. Maybe there's a product you're passionate about. For example, if you're a passionate soccer player, then you know a lot about soccer equipment, balls and stuff like that. The point is that it will be much easier for you to market and sell the product you know and you're passionate about than the average product. Your job as an entrepreneur is to market and sell your product. That's your number one goal. And the more familiar you are with the product, the better it is. A couple of other recommendations. Adaptability. The product that you choose must be adaptable to the requirements of foreign markets, because the legislation and also customers' perception of the product is different from country to country. So your product must be able to adapt to the requirements of different markets, both governments and consumers. Also look into the products where there is an established production process or established after-sales service process. You don't want to experiment with the brand new products unless you're a startup, then you have no choice. But if you have a choice, I'd rather recommend you to select the more established product, and also the product with the significant profit margin. There are extra costs of doing business internationally. You take it in international travel. If you're traveling for business, it's going to cost you quite a lot of money. So you want to make sure that your product's margin is good enough to compensate those extra costs. So those are a few considerations about the product selection. Also recommend to limit yourself when you're starting up to 1, 2, or maybe 3 products at most. Don't go with 10 different varieties and 20 different options. Try to focus on those, the number of kids that you can manage, which is usually 1 to 3. Global value proposition, that's another pillar in the strong foundation of your export and import business. The value proposition refers to the reason why the foreign buyer should buy your product versus any other competitive products, or versus doing nothing. That reason may be in the product itself. Maybe there are certain features, benefits, advantages of your product, but maybe it's not really about the product itself. Maybe it's about the guarantee that you provide. For example, maybe you're dealing with a food product that lasts on the shelf 3 times longer than your competitor. Then even if your product is more expensive, then retail chains may be more interested in your product because it can last longer. And they don't have to throw away waste. Now, the other potential value proposition and the reason why your customers will buy from you could come from the speed of delivery. For some products, like food products, it's also very important to be able to deliver them fast. And for some other products, like spare parts or maybe some kind of mining supplies, mining equipment, it's also very important to be able to deliver those goods on time and around the world. So if you can deliver, say, the spare part for a particular piece of mining machine in 5 days from, say, Canada to Brazil, versus your competitor that can only do it in 14 days, then you're in a better position. The next pillar is profiling the ideal buyer or supplier. You approach this from the demographic perspective, and depending on who your customer is, whether it's the individual or the other business, you profile them differently. Basically, you define the location of your ideal client, their say age, gender, income. When it comes to business, you also want to clearly define the industry and the size of the operation, because you may not necessarily be willing to do business with large corporations. Maybe smaller businesses are your clients, or better, at least better clients when you start. We just heard the example of the startup that deals with Volkswagen. That's perfect, but maybe that's you're a little bit early for that. Maybe not. That's again up to you. However, you have to clearly profile. If it's automotive, if the automotive say manufacturers are your clients, then it has to be in your client profile. The reason why you profile both suppliers and buyers is because you have limited marketing budget when you start your international trading business, and you cannot advertise to everyone across the world yet. So you're not one of those large Coca-Colas of the world. Maybe this day will come, and I hope it will, but when you start, focus on very specific niche. Because again, you have to make sure that you can afford to reach out and to market and to advertise to those niche audiences. The final pillar is the market selection. There's over 170 or 90, according to some stats, countries on Earth. So how do you define the right market for you? So there are some tools that are available online that can help you at least to narrow down the list of potential markets. And one of those tools, my favorite, is United Nations Country Database. This is the online database of international trade, and every United Nations member reports the data. The way you use this data is you enter the product that you want to trade and the countries where and to you want to trade them. Then in the end, what you get is the list of countries that buy the products made in the particular country that you're interested in. So this is the example of trade stats of oilseed trade between Canada and the rest of the countries. So if oilseeds is your product, if you're interested in selling, exporting oilseeds, then what this data shows you that, okay, United States is #1 market, which is not a surprise for Canada. However, you also notice that there are others, and the market volume, and the sales volume is quite good. For example, Japan, Chile, Costa Rica, and actually, who would have guessed that Costa Rica will be there, given the population, small population. However, there is a business, and then what you do, once you got that list, then you go through a few qualifying questions. So first of all, try to ask yourself where you have the most connections. Maybe you have more connections in, say, Costa Rica versus Japan. International trade is a lot about connections and relationships. It's number one in international trade. So you have, even though let's say US is a larger market, so it's a much larger market than Costa Rica, but if you have, say, family members or friends or somehow you can access to the potential buyers in Costa Rica or get introduced to them, guess what? You have much better chances than if you were to go with this product to the established market, to the United States. Also, look into those countries where you have the most of ideal buyers. By this time you already have the profile of your ideal buyers. So look into that opportunity as well. Where the business culture is familiar to you, that's also very important. Because again, it's all about connections and relationships and understanding people and being understood. So it's not only about language skills, but also cultural sensitivity and being able to, say, interpret the body language. That's also very important. So let's say in your case, maybe you are expert in, say, Japanese business culture, and you can interpret Japanese language and body language. If not, then maybe Latin American culture is more familiar to you. Again, the more familiar you are with the business culture, the higher your chances are for securing the contacts. Last but not least, think about those markets where your product is competitive. And again, when talking about competitiveness, go back to the value proposition. And I want to assure you that the price is not necessarily the point, it is not always the only point of competitiveness. Again, your product may be more expensive, but if you can offer something else to your buyers, then you are in a better position even compared to cheaper suppliers. Now, $1 million question, where do we actually get the contacts of either buyers or sellers? One could probably answer that the easiest way is to go online and just search. But, and this is certainly a valid strategy, however, we don't recommend to start with it. Leave it as your last opportunity if you are unable to find the contacts otherwise, offline, then go online. So what's number one recommendation that we usually provide for finding the customers or suppliers internationally? It's contacting chambers of commerce. Especially in the big cities like Toronto, we have a lot of bilateral and international chambers of commerce. And those chambers are funded by the governments of both Canada and the other counterparty, and their mandate is to promote international trade between those countries. So they are not particularly biased on either export or import. And that means that you could get in touch with one of those chambers, and because you know what kind of product you want to buy or sell, you have a profile of your ideal supplier or buyer, and with that information, it will be very straightforward conversation with the chambers so that they could give you some leads and contacts. The reason why we advise to start because going through the chambers first is because they could give you pre-qualified leads and contacts, suppliers, that are legitimate. So somebody already has done business with them, those chambers know that they are existing companies, they are not some kind of scammers, which is exactly what you want to avoid. So start with those. Another way to find the contacts of either suppliers or buyers is to get in touch with the industry association of either suppliers or buyers. For example, if you are looking to import coffee beans from Brazil, rather than trying to contact one farmer after the other, given that there is also a language barrier, maybe a better idea is to contact the Brazilian Association of Coffee Farmers. And then depending on your needs and the quantity that you want to buy, and the particular kind of coffee that you want to buy, they will recommend you specific farmers that will match your needs. So again, it's much better and much more straightforward approach than finding Brazilian coffee farmers online and trying to contact them via their websites or phones. Another good source of the contacts is trade commissioner service. Now, every country, one way or the other, has the trade commissioner services or export promotion organizations. In Canada, it's called Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, which is part of Global Affairs Canada. Other countries have different approaches. For example, Mexico has the international organization called Pro-Mexico. It's the organization funded by the Mexican government. But the point is that those organizations, their mandate is to increase the exports of from those countries. So if you are a Canadian entrepreneur, if you want to export Canadian product, then you could approach Canadian Trade Commissioner Service in the market where you are trying to sell your product, and then they could help you with navigating the compliance barriers, tariffs, and also potentially do some matchmaking. And the other organizations like Pro-Mexico I mentioned from Mexico, Pro-Chile from Chile, and other similar trade commissioner service or promotional organizations, they run similar fashion. If you want to buy something in Mexico, then the easiest approach would be to go to Pro-Mexico and tell them exactly what you want to buy from Mexico. And they will get back to you with the contacts of the reputable suppliers. And again, only after all of this is not successful, which I doubt it will, then you can try to find somebody online. Again, the only danger with online searching for the partner is that you don't necessarily know who the person on the other side is. It's always better to explore other avenues of finding customers or suppliers alike. So, what are your next steps? So, your next step is first of all to come up with the product idea, what product you will specifically be trading, and then you profile your ideal customer. You come up with your value proposition. And once that is identified, it is time to find the markets for your product. And after you find the market, then you start looking for the customers or suppliers. Of course, there are some other steps in between, such as registering your corporation, but that's something that is outside of the format of this event. So there's more. There's more to that, but the most important is here. The most important is to build a strong foundation of your international trading business, because it will help your business to succeed for sure. Because all other things like logistics, customs clearance, all of those things are you can resolve all of those things, so you can work how to do those things. Is not as critical as establishing the solid foundation of your business. So if you have any questions now, let me know. If you need more help, I'm always happy to answer your questions after the event or one-on-one with you. And we'll be happy to take those. Thank you.
Any questions, guys?
Yeah.
Do you still think it's wise to be exporting your ideas out of the country with all the stuff that's happening in the world, like tariffs and there's, I know a friend that tried to bring a product abroad and they were nickel and dime to death. And by the time it got where they wanted to put it in the market, they had to raise the price, which their business fell apart, right? So I'm just seeing that the way the world is trending, do you think that it's wise at this time? I'm just thinking maybe we should wait till there's a certain person out of something before, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I don't know, would this be the good time, because we have students graduating, would this be the ideal time, or should they wait?
See, the point that, my personal opinion is that if you wait, then you will be surprised how fast the time flies. And if you wait, if you don't make attempts to export your idea, export your product, then you may run into the situation that somebody else took your spot. Because even in good economic times, and before we had all of the sanction wars 10 years ago, it wasn't easy. There are other barriers, and the most difficult barrier to deal with is the perception of the product by foreign customers. because all those compliance issues, tariffs, you can legally go through them. However, there's nothing you can do if the customers perceive your product negatively. Well, again, there are some things to do, but the point is, it was complex, and yes, those tariffs and sanctions and wars, tariff wars, certainly add complexity, but they aren't making things too negative.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Yes.
I apologize for being late because I had to attend a funeral. But for organic product, is it really good to export it? Like, is there a particular country you would suggest?
Based on the information from our clients that are in food business, European Union seems to be very sensitive to organic and natural healthy foods. So if there is a destination I'd recommend, it's probably European Union. And also Canada has now a free trade agreement with Europe, which also helps.
And,
yeah, please.
And France, what would you, is there some, I'm fully bilingual, I'm from Ontario. Does France have a product that they would actually want from Canada that you would recommend?
I don't have that information.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure.
Actually, I have an Italian business license, but I don't have here. So, do I need some import and export license here in Canada?
There's no specific license here in Canada. However, there is so-called export and import business number.
Yeah, because on the website, on Canada government website, there's something like you don't need to have an import and export license.
That may depend on what product. But generally, if you open the export and import trading business, then all you need is the import or export business number that is attached to your 9-digit corporate number, CRS or CRA number in Canada. Then, depending on your product, some food products, or if you're dealing with food products, yes, some of them may, for importing some of them to Canada, you may need the license to import.
Okay, what about the additional cost of customs?
Was that?
What are the additional costs in customs on the product goods?
Good question. So that depends on the product. Again, if the country of origin is Italy, then chances are that it's duty free because we now have free trade agreement. So there's only about like 1% of the products from Europe that still have
Just
Canadian
1% on the good? Just 1% on the good?
No. I mean, out of the entire variety of all possible products, only 1% of this entire variety is still subject to tariffs between Canada and Europe, but 99% of the entire universe of the products is not